the 29th of April, and this is your friendly neighborhood watchman. Well, folks, the proverbial shoe has dropped, and I'm referring to the ongoing matter involving the unfortunate and tragic death of Constable Jilks whilst performing police duties. And by the way, if as I have been told, his father is 6699 Jilks, it's even more sad for me because I worked with his father and we got along very well. So my condolences again to his family and friends and loved ones. Now, what happened is that the Commissioner of Police, when he arrived at the scene of the incident and was informed by members of the media that reports were that the officer was shot in the back of the head by one of his own colleagues, the Commissioner dismissed that as being rubbish and gave his own conclusion that the officer was shot from the front. I believe he made that conclusion based on the information that he received from officers on the scene. But he ignored the cardinal rule in such matters that you must take sufficient time to gather enough evidence before you can form even a preliminary conclusion. So not just talking to officers on the scene, but also talking to other witnesses, if any, on the scene, examining the crime scene itself, getting a post-mortem, and in this day and age, even scrutinizing social media to see if anybody is on there talking or showing videos about the incident that could lead to making a proper conclusion. He did not do that, and his words affected his credibility somewhat because of later realizations. Now, some people argue that the commissioner should not have said anything and he should have just kept quiet. No, that is not the correct approach. An incident commander or the head of an organization in such a serious incident has to say something. But the something you must say is limited based on the information and facts that you have at your disposal. And since he had very little at that time, he should have just said an incident took place. I am here now. We are going to conduct a thorough investigation. And I presently do not have enough information to provide you with a factual account. But we will provide the press and the public with relevant updates at reasonable times. Thank you very much. Have a good day and keep doing your jobs well. Because as one officer, Superintendent Norton, said during a recent symposium, UE symposium relating to crime, the police does not have, and when I say the police, I mean the senior officers, incident commanders, commissioners, deputy commissioners, those kinds of people do not have the option of saying no comment when they present themselves to the press. And Norton is right about that. Because no comment is the British version of pleading the fifth. In America, when a suspect or a person does not want to answer a question, the Fifth Amendment says that they remain silent and they would not say anything that may incriminate them. And that is called the fifth. So they just say, I plead the fifth. In the British setting, suspects and other persons, when faced with the same situation, will say no comment. So no comment comes across as if you have something to hide, or you are covering up something, or you are guilty about something. So officers who are incident commanders and senior officers on the scene and so on, when faced with the media, have to say something, but they have to be understanding enough and astute enough to avoid making blunders as the commissioner did in this instance. Now, fast forward a couple of days, and I saw the commissioner on Beyond the Tape. And to his credit, he sounded much more reasonable. Maybe the pressure was not as great as on that particular day, but he attempted to correct the record. And what we gathered from it was that, yes, the post-mortem showed that the officer was shot from behind. And from the evidence, the person who was initially identified as a suspect was no longer being treated as a suspect and was now a potential witness. And importantly, the firearms of all the officers, well, I'm not sure if all the officers who were on the exercise, but of officers who were on the exercise were seized. Now, I think I heard on Friday, so I don't know if it was seized immediately after the incident, which it should have been, or sometime subsequent to the incident later at the station, which I think is the wrong approach. It has to be taken at the scene in order to avoid people switching weapons or allegations being made of people switching weapons. You understand? So, that being said, it now appears that a proper investigation is ongoing. And the commissioner's appearance on Beyond the Tape serves as an update to the population about the state of affairs as it presently stands. Now, the commissioner, as I said, I was pleased with his approach on Beyond the Tape. I was not so pleased with the approach taken by Superintendent Alexander. For whilst he looks impressive as a police officer in uniform and his bearing and manner is forthright and strong, he sounds more like a bad defense lawyer trying to defend the indefensible when he's responding to incidents involving the police. And that, I don't think, is a proper way to conduct this. Additionally, he has to do something about improving his vocabulary, because he seems unable to string two sentences together without lapsing into green verbs and bad grammar and all of the rest. It may sound folksy and down to earth, but when compared to Marlon Hopkinson, who obviously has a more professional approach and is very astute and sharp and witty, we need a better representative. So either Alexander improves, or I think we should get someone else. Coming back to the case of Constable Jilks, my concern is that what do you mean that the man is no longer a suspect? Do you mean a suspect in the shooting death of Constable Jilks? That may be so. But please remember that the allegation goes further than that the man was involved in a shootout with the police. And during that shootout, Constable Jilks lost his life. Does it mean then that the gentleman was not involved in a shootout? That he was not armed with a firearm? And if he was not, then who was? And if he was, and nobody else other than the police were armed on that day and shooting, then who lied? Somebody must have lied and give the commissioner wrong information about the incident, which is very serious. But because it caused the man to embarrass himself on the media. So who lied? Because I would say that the man is still a suspect in shooting at the police, shooting with intent, possession of illegal firearm, common assault, and even an implication in the death of Constable Gilks, to the extent that it might even be manslaughter. And I spoke about the felony murder rule in America. It would be in that regard in America. I'm not so sure that the same issue applies in Trinidad the same way in our principle of transferred malice. But that is for another discussion. But if someone did not lie, then how did we come to this conclusion that the man is no longer a suspect? So now, what are we going to do? Officers are on sick leave, I understand. And they might remain on sick leave. But that doesn't mean that if you're on sick leave that you cannot be interviewed by the police. Unless you're providing medical reports to say that you are incapacitated by some medical condition that makes it impossible for you to be interviewed. Being on sick leave means that you're off from work. But is the investigation now heading in the direction of police wrongful shooting? And if it is, does it now mean a possible manslaughter charge for someone involved in this accidental shooting? Because you could shoot a person accidentally without intending to shoot that person, but your actions could be so reckless that it could become or seen as manslaughter. That is why it is important for the Commissioner of Police to understand all of these nuances before opening his or her mouth to speak on these matters. And also, any spokesman, and the police needs spokesmen for the police service, not the commissioner himself. At that stage, he should go into a prepared press conference, but you have a spokesman who will speak on behalf of the police service after having been properly briefed on what he or she is supposed to say. Nobody should go before the press and extempo. And that was told to me by another senior officer. And it is so relevant. Yeah, it's like extempoing. You have to be prepared. And this is why we're having this discussion now. And yes, it is true we have to await the outcome of the investigation before we draw firm conclusions. But since we were thrust into this situation by the words and actions of the Commissioner of Police, then it is relevant and important that we discuss the issues even before an investigation is completed. And what is important about that is because we are never sure that we're going to get the true outcome. We're still waiting on the outcome of Emailgate. We are still awaiting the outcome of the investigation in the two men who they said fell off a chair or fell off a bed or a bed and a chair and died in police custody. We have not been told what was the outcome. Did the police complete the investigations? And after having completed the investigations, what action, if any, was taken? Or the investigations still being done? These are the reasons why we have to discuss it. And we'll continue to discuss it as more evidence and information come to light. This is The Watchman. Have a good Friday, you all.